Off we go, I suppose. Welcome, everyone. This is Agata Morka from SPARC Europe. Today, we have the pleasure to talk to Marin Dacos, who is the scientific advisor for open science at the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. It's a very long name, I have to say.
Very long.
So you are the founder of Open Edition, and you acted as its director for several years. You received numerous prizes for your work in advancing open, among others, the Google grants for digital humanities, but also the very prestigious Médaille de l'Innovation in 2016. And you have been writing extensively, especially about digital humanities. So I was looking at the manifesto for the digital humanities that you wrote in 2010. And I very much like the quote from there. So you wrote there, "We call for the integration of digital culture in the definition of the general culture of the 21st century." And then among different areas in which you would like to see change happening, you also mentioned infrastructures. And you said, "We call for the creation of scalable digital infrastructures responding to real needs." And that sentence really resonated with me. And it's not really a surprise that today we are going to talk about infrastructures. So I wanted to talk to you about the role of open science infrastructures in scholarly communications. I think broadly, let's put it that way. So to begin with, a really general question. So the open science infrastructure is a very broad term. So what is your take on it? How do you define the open science infrastructure? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's very difficult to define it. We understand it broadly when you use it, but when you need to define it, it's less easier.
Yeah.
Less easy. But I can say that it's something like a tool, but it's not a tool that you need on your desk. It's a shared tool at large scale, at national or even worldwide scale. A tool that you need to do your research. So for me, infrastructures in scholarly communication or open science infrastructures, it's not the same thing. And I prefer to focus on open science infrastructures than only on scholarly communication, because it's only one part of the whole ecosystem. And I would say that for me, an open scholarly infrastructure is something that stops the system to work when you remove it. So if you absolutely need it, you don't see it unless it's broken. So it's like an highway when you ride a car, you drive a car. It's the same thing, but for research. So for example, Crossref is an open scholarly infrastructure. Nobody knows it. It provides DOIs. You don't need DOIs unless DOIs are disappearing, because they are one of the top layer, absolutely necessary system or tool or service that makes everything getting together. So of course, you have very diverse kind of in service and infrastructures like this. Scholarly communication, of course, publishing platforms, but also data research platform and so on. And of course, PIDs tools that are very necessary.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, I think that there is a very interesting tension between this absence and presence. So you only realize that it's there when it ceases to exist. And that brings me to my next question, because in this context, I think that sustaining open science infrastructure is very important. So how do you think we need to sustain it? What can we do to sustain open science infrastructure?
The thing is to understand that we need it and that we have it. 4 years concerning mainly scholarly publishing, we didn't have a clue that they existed. So it was, in French, we'd say ancillary object. So a secondary object. So French people, French government didn't care about the academic publishing system. And then 30 years later, they said, okay, we want all our publications to be open access. And at the time, they realized that they have lost all the control over the publication system because they didn't take care of it. So the question is, we need to take care of it. And we need to understand that it's not a question of money. It's a question of governance. So we want to provide them money to live and to grow and to be useful. And we will, in France, we want to do it on the basis of the open scholarly infrastructures principles. So that means it can be private or it can be public, but it has to rely on principles that makes them common. If they are not a common because they are privately detained to make money, we are afraid of losing control of it. So one reason why I am very happy that Crossref has decided to join the open scholarly infrastructures principles. And I'm a member of the board of Crossref, and I thought I was a part of this decision. So we need to provide money. So this is the how, but not only providing money as buying a service in a grocery or something like that, or in a library. We need to provide money with the mind that it's a common good. And it's a common good of the scholarly community. And it should be driven by the scholarly principles.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That also brings me to the next question. So what are the risks, in your opinion, if all of a sudden, if we, or in your case, if France would not invest in open science infrastructure, what happens then? So
we have two solutions. One option is that the infrastructures disappear. So we would have less sophisticated and less mature service ecosystem, or they could be taken by private interest for private money and for private benefits. So if during a period, it could be okay, at the end, we will lose control and we will not be able to enhance access, control, and progress of research, because the interest of the science is not exactly all the time the interest of the money.
Absolutely. Do you want to elaborate, or okay, good.
No.
But actually, I like the conversation seems to flow very nicely towards my next question, which is actually about money. So we do sometimes see a certain challenge in convincing institutions, organizations to invest in open science infrastructure. And the question here is, I think, how do you justify funding something that you don't directly benefit from, but that the broader open science community benefits from?
Okay, so we have a malediction. The malediction of open science infrastructures is a free rider.
Yep.
So the free rider is someone or some organization using a system that is free, because it should be open, it should be free, and and the free rider isn't politically mature enough to understand that he needs on long term to keep the control on the system. But on the short term, they have advantage not to pay, not to invest money or energy or creativity or anything in the system. So the question of awareness of the risk and the importance of providing a long-term funding model and ethical long-term funding model to this open science infrastructures is an investment in the future. So the free rider issue is very, very important. We didn't have answered to this question. It cannot change the open scholarly infrastructures principles. So normally the principles say you cannot sell the data, you can also ask money for the services. If you reward the good player and to not reward the free riders, we would have to reduce the quality of the service. This is an issue. I want us to avoid it. So there is a high importance of having good metrics or good indicators on the importance of the open science infrastructures in usage. For example, we need to know how many thousand or million scholarly users use on a daily basis our open scholarly infrastructures, and find a way to mutualize the cost. In fact, the cost is less expensive, far less expensive than when we mutualize it. And it's a reason why France has created the National Open Science Fund to do that. And we hope that other countries will do the same thing. There is a solution which I have in mind for the open scholarly publishing system. You know that we spend a lot of money in APCs, article processing charges, and we are a bit afraid and skeptical about this system, which could drive to very, very inconvenient problem. So we cannot fight against APCs, of course. We cannot forbid them or something like that. But my proposal would be, each time we give €1 or $1 to an APC, we should fund a worldwide or European-wide or national-wide open science fund that would provide money and support to other business models. So in this topic, my main issue is to get to sustain diversity of the systems, because the monopoly or the oligopoly of some players is very, very dangerous for the quality, for the diversity, for the inclusiveness, and for the academic freedom too.
Absolutely. And so, I guess speaking about this freedom and also a certain balance of power.
Yeah, so exactly.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in your opinion, what can governments or academic communities, perhaps, what can they do to help create, yes, this more balance of power between commercial and non-commercial players that support infrastructure to ensure what you've been talking about, to ensure more equitable access to knowledge for all?
So my idea is to create funds and to give money to the open science infrastructures, community-driven and community-owned. Well, in fact, the question is that, it's, again, a lot of countries, a lot of organizations have more urgent topics to deal with than to support common infrastructures, because when you provide money to an infrastructures, you are not going up in the ranking system of the research rankings. So there is a need of a shared governance of these open science infrastructures. We need to imply the states and the big research performing organizations. We need to imply also the big universities. And in fact, we have already done that. We have strong national and European and worldwide research infrastructures like telescopes. In fact, research infrastructure, even if digital, is like a telescope. And everybody is agreeing that we can pay for that. So these telescopes are far less expensive than the telescopes. So we should raise awareness of the risk at stake. And we have learned a lot from the 30 or 40 years, last 40 years of concentration of the publishing industry. This concentration at one time is a risk for everybody. Now everybody knows it. So the same risk happens for the other services, and maybe probably there are bigger risks because it's closer to the place where we produce knowledge and not the place where we publish knowledge, because publishing is less complex than producing knowledge. So if you have privatization and ownership of inside and concentrated or monopoly or oligopoly, at the end, everybody will lose, even the private sector. So maybe I should ask something that we can also have a partnership with the private companies, because they do work for us. We don't want them to die. We just have a balance of power. We just want, okay, say, okay, it's public money. We have a clear road where we want to go. If you are very good, then for 5 years, you do this or this service for us. It's possible. There is no issue with that. Mm-hmm. But at the end, the controls should be back if there is a risk, a crisis, or something like that. That would be my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. That's a great vision. Hopefully, something could be done with it and will be done with it. Those were all my questions for today.